authors, entertainers to innovators, we connect with those who help shape our culture. Join us in revealing stories of their lives and backgrounds, their triumphs and tragedies that molded them into who they are today. Authentically off-script and personally illuminating, this is Audibles with Jason Scarborough. This week on Audibles, Don Kessinger.
So your story begins July 17th, 1942 in Forrest City, Arkansas. How would you describe growing up there in Forrest City, Arkansas?
Wonderful place to grow up. I really mean that sincerely. I guess I could say with the friends I had and everything, it was easy to be good. You know, it was. Now it's changed today, and don't mean that to be too negative, but you know, I'm certainly glad I grew up at a time when I did there, and it was wonderful. And I came through, frankly, with high school can be very cyclical because you don't recruit, basically, and you just, whatever you get. And I came through at a time with great athletes. I think we won football-wise 5 straight years that we won our district, and it was a great atmosphere and a great place to be.
How would you describe the Kessinger family growing up there in Forrest City?
Probably a pretty typical family, small town family. My parents owned a small grocery store, and you know, I'd work a little bit there in the summer, not very much, but always had to go to baseball practice or something, you know. But it was great growing up there. We didn't have much money, but I didn't know we didn't have much money. I mean, whatever we needed, somehow we got, and so it's great.
Was your family an athletic family, or are you really the first one from your family?
Oh no, I have an older sister and an older brother, and you know, my dad, of course, I didn't see him play, but everybody told me he was a very good athlete, and then. My sister was, in fact, several people have told me my sister might have been the best athlete in the family, and but she was old enough more than me that I don't know that, and I don't know that I ever told her I thought she was. No, I'm just kidding. But my brother went to a smaller school, went to the University of Central Arkansas, but Bill had lettered in 4 sports there, and. So, yeah, we've had a pretty good background, and they all tried to help me much as they could, and I'm sure they did help me a lot.
Do you remember how young you were when the sports really started becoming important to you or on the radar?
No, I can't remember a time they weren't. You know, I loved to play, and whatever was in season, that's what I tried to play, and blessed to be able to do that with a bunch of good guys.
When did it become apparent that baseball was going to be something that you were going to be very good at or had a knack for, or was going to be a very big part of your life?
Oh, you know, I suppose sometime after like Little League or whatever, but I loved all sports and had a chance, frankly, to go to a lot of different schools in one sport or another. And, you know, it's hard to grow up in Arkansas and leave Arkansas because, you know, there's really only one school in Arkansas that everybody considers to be big time. And so, you know, it was a little bit of an issue when I decided Ole Miss was for me. But really, you ask about baseball, I had a chance to, at the time, if you're going to play both sports, which I was going to try to do, basketball and baseball, you had to do a basketball scholarship because the NCAA says if you sign a football scholarship, that's the only sport you can play. And if you play in basketball, you could play anything except football, which is behind. And it was really to try to make the parity in different scholarship times. And so I was looking for a place that would allow me to play both sports. And most of them would give me the opportunity to do that. But honestly, University of Arkansas kind of eliminated itself because it didn't emphasize baseball at all back in the day. And they they were in Southwest Conference, but they didn't participate in baseball in the Southwest Conference at all. So my senior year, I think they scheduled maybe 15 games or something like that. It was, and conversely, Ole Miss was probably the best baseball school in the South. Coach Swayze coaching here, and so it was kind of a no-brainer for me.
You mentioned it's hard to leave Arkansas if you're from Arkansas. So how much pushback did you get when you left?
Well, there were an awful lot of people that didn't understand because, you just grow up a Razorback fan there. And, but as I said, to me, it was a no-brainer. And Mississippi State was an option. University of Memphis State at that time was a great basketball school. And but when I visited Ole Miss, it just fell in place. Everybody was friendly, nice. Loved it.
So during your high school years at Forrest City High School, the Mustangs, are they still the Mustangs?
Yes, they are.
Home of the Mustangs. So you led your football team your senior year to a state championship. So apparently you had a knack for playing football. So what was it that allowed you or convinced you to kind of distance yourself from football and really pursue baseball?
I weighed about 150 pounds, I guess. That might be. I was a quarterback, and we were an undefeated team, and the quarterback gets a lot of credit when you're an undefeated team. And so, I loved it and had a great high school coach named Jim DeVasier, and it was a good time. But again, I'd settled in on the two sports I thought I could play in college, and I hoped that one day I'd be able to play professional baseball, and so I wanted to make sure that we picked the right school to help with that process.
Did you know anything about Ole Miss baseball outside of they were an SEC team or Coach Swayze before you came to Oxford?
Not really. Coach Swayze was really the one that recruited me more than anyone else to Ole Miss, although Coach Country Graham was a basketball coach and certainly did his part. But Tom Swayze was a great guy, just personable. I really knew what he was doing, and I was just fortunate that I came at the right time.
You play for Coach Swayze. Here's a coach that only has 3 losing seasons and over 20 seasons as a coach, and make it to Omaha 3 different times. So a lot of success, winning SEC titles, going to Omaha. How would you describe the experience playing for Coach Swayze?
It was really, seriously, I know we say nice things about people all the time, but Tom Swayze was a great baseball coach and a better man. It was just a pleasure. Now, he wasn't easy. I didn't say that. He was not easy. He worked really hard, and he made you work hard. And as our players used to say, when he hit infield to you, he hit worm burners, and he really did. He smoked it, but it was great for me. It was great for me, and so I made the right choice.
So I'm gonna read off. People love when I do this. I'm gonna read off what you did at Ole Miss. You earned all conference, all SEC, and all America honors in both basketball and baseball here at Ole Miss. Your .436 batting average in 1964 remains the best in Ole Miss history, and your .400 career batting average remains the highest as well. In basketball, you twice led the SEC in scoring and had a career scoring average of 22.2 points per game. It's one thing to dominate and do really well in one sport, but 2. So a decorated career at Ole Miss in 2 sports, you really don't see that very often. Why do you feel that you were able to not just compete, but do really, really well in not 1 but 2 sports?
I don't know that I have an answer to that, except I love sports, I love to play, and I had some guys played with me and fed me the ball and told me to shoot. And,
kind of made it easy.
Yeah, it's I guess you can score a lot of points if you shoot enough times, and I tried to do that.
Don't go anywhere. Audibles returns in a moment here on the Spirit Media Network.
When you find a great community, you will find great health care. That is exactly what King's Daughters Medical Center provides. Keeping businesses moving with occupational wellness, heart-healthy screenings, diabetes education and management, community education, and remote patient monitoring that promotes better care in between regular office visits. KDMC, caring for our community like no one else can.
We're going the extra mile, and we're taking you with us.
We have a responsibility to get the work to the streets.
Join us on the Extra Mile podcast as we travel Mississippi highways to bring you in-depth conversations with state leaders,
gotta have the ability to get their product to market,
infrastructure stakeholders, and Mississippi locals to give you a behind-the-scenes look at transportation throughout the state.
Highways, movement of goods, these are things that we rely on every day.
You can listen and watch episodes of the show by visiting gomdot.com/the extra mile.
Wendy's without the Wendy's app is like a hamburger without the fresh beef.
No!
Get the app to order ahead, order delivery, earn free food, and get app-exclusive offers. One app, all the Wendy's.
So sweet, so crispy. Nobody makes breakfast as good as Wendy's new home-style French toast sticks.
Nobody.
Nope.
Keep talking. I can't hear you.
I should probably stop.
Choose wisely. Choose Wendy's home-style French toast sticks.
For those on the go, we give you Audibles with Jason Scarborough, the podcast.
What are we listening to? Are we listening to a playlist? Are we listening to a podcast?
What a great question.
Listen to our intimate interviews with guests on your favorite podcast platforms, including iTunes, Google Play, Amazon Music, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, and so many more.
Do you ever look back and say, you know, my life, the story could have ended up differently had it not been for your grandparents?
Incredibly different, for sure.
Plus, you'll hear behind-the-scenes commentary on each guest, interview preparation, location, and so much more from Jason himself.
Do you have a favorite Coach Bowden story that you can share with us?
I can tell you this, what you see with Bobby Bowden is what you get.
Check out Audibles with Jason Scarborough, the podcast, on any of these popular podcast locations and hit subscribe, download, and enjoy. Now, back to the show.
You then signed by the Chicago Cubs. They assigned you to their AA team, June of '64. And you make your major league debut September 7th, 1964 for the Chicago Cubs. I mean, things are really moving rapidly for you at this point. So how did you keep perspective in light of how fast things were moving for you at that point?
You know, the honest truth to that is I probably wasn't smart enough to know I wasn't supposed to be able to do that. And so, you know, I didn't know that it was so unusual to be in the big leagues within a year and to go straight from AA to the big leagues your first year out. So, you know, now as I look back, I'm just blessed. Lord took care of me, got me in the right place, and but I didn't know that, you know, I wasn't supposed to do that.
You were voted to be the starting shortstop for the National League in the 1968 All Star game. At the end of that season, you ranked first among the league's shortstops in assists. You follow that up in 1969. Again, you're an all-star. This time you're joined by your entire Chicago Cubs infield, which was pretty cool. That year in 1969, you set a major league single-season record for shortstops. You played in 54 games without committing an error. That's insane when you look back at it. You broke the previous record set by I'm not even going to try to pronounce Chico's last name, in 1951. Most kids playing baseball hope to play in one All-Star game in Little League, high school. You get to play in back-to-back All-Star games. I mean, what do you think? What's going through your mind that you're getting to experience all this?
Well, you're exactly right. It wasn't going through my mind, but I think it's more unlikely now that I look back on it than it was at the time. I mean, my goal was really to try to lead the league in assists, because I felt like I'd probably make enough errors I wouldn't get a lot of gold gloves, but I thought I could cover some range and do some things and if the more people you throw out, the more you're helping your team. I mean, that's the way I viewed it. I'm saying, I don't know if that's right or wrong, but that's what I did. And by doing that, the first 3 years that I played in the All Star game, the players voted who they wanted to represent them in the league, in the All Star game. And so therefore, we really didn't vote till maybe 2 weeks before the All Star game, because the players you vote and you send it in. And that was, to me, the greatest thrill, not making light of any of the other, but the fact when your peers vote you to represent them in the All Star game, to me, that was just a great compliment. And then the next 3 years I played, it was a fans vote. And that's wonderful. It's a favorites game, and that's okay. You want to be a favorite, but I don't believe that it was quite the thrill as it was when your peers voted you to play.
That's interesting to hear you say. Why do you feel like it's that way? Like it's not, what was the word? Not quite as exciting or not quite as fun?
Well, excited might not be the word, but as far as the honor of the thing, I mean, if your peers voted you to be the best, that's something. That's really something. And so, that's the way it was. And and those All-Star games are so. I mean, back when I played, I was with the National League all 6 times, and I'm telling you, I don't know how it is today, but back then we wanted to win that game because we wanted everybody to know the National League was better than the American League, which probably wasn't, but we did win 5 of those 6, and but that was first time in that. You mentioned 1968. That was in the Houston Astrodome. And gosh, I'll never forget sitting in that locker room when I went in there and looking around at everybody that was in there. And there's Hank Aaron, Willie Mays, Roberto Clemente, Bob Gibson, just on and on and on. And I mean, your thing is, what am I doing here? Just, please, Lord, don't let me make an error, if I can't. And, I told my wife the night before that first game, I said, what's going to happen? We're playing on turf. It's not a great infield in the old Astrodome. And, Frank Howard was one of the American League players who was a giant of a man. I said, he's going to hit a rocket at me first inning, or something. And he did. But it was a line drive, and I was able to catch it, and it kind of got behind. But it was quite a thrill, quite a thrill.
You had a storied career with the Chicago Cubs, 6-time All-Star, 2-time Golden Glove winner. You played with some other Cubs greats. I've heard you in past interviews talk about Ernie Banks and Ron Santo. You had a 6-for-6 day in 1971, by the way. You were the first Cub with a 6-hit game at the time in nearly 34 years. You had 11 great seasons with the Cubs. I'm curious, we go through all the stats. Is there an accomplishment that you're most proud of that maybe doesn't get the ink or the coverage that maybe you hoped that it would?
Well, what I always hoped was that I was a model of consistency. I hope that when I went to play the game that they knew what they were going to get, you know, and I wanted to play as many games as I could. I didn't want a day off because somebody might go play out there and get 6 hits, you know, and then they got to play them again, you know. So I wanted to play every game I could play, and did most of them. If you look at my numbers, out of 162 games, I would bet I played 150 of them a lot of times, you know, and so, you know, it's just, look, I love to play. I love to play in front of the Cub fans. I thought I was blessed again.
As happens in professional sports, you were traded in 1975 to the Cardinals, and you're there for a couple seasons, and then guess what? You're coming back to the Windy City, this time with the Chicago White Sox. And so knowing how you feel about the city of Chicago and what this city meant to you, was it strange to come back in a different capacity, or were you all...
Maybe scary is the right word.
Scary, why?
Well, I had seen that you're either a Cub fan or a Sox fan. I mean, there are very, very few that genuinely pull for both teams. And I'd seen Ron Santo go from the Cubs to the White Sox. And Ronnie was a great friend and a great player, but it just didn't work. It just didn't work. And Ron didn't really enjoy his time, and I don't think the fans were pleased. It just didn't work, you know. And so when I was with the Cardinals, and they got me, I think, to play shortstop and to play a consistent shortstop. And in 1976, when we left spring training, I genuinely thought we had a team that could win the pennant and would win the pennant. And we just, maybe again, it just didn't work. My year was about what it normally is, probably, but we had some great players that had very rare, not good years for them. Even Lou Brock or Ted Simmons and Reggie Smith. I mean, they were all great players, but they didn't have great years. And so we ended up not doing so hot. And the Cardinals' #1 prospect in the minor league was a shortstop named Gary Templeton, who was really a good player. And so that's the reason I really got traded, I think. Well, that's what they told me. I mean, they're going to call up Templeton. And, you know, originally they said, just kind of help the young man out and help him with positioning and do. And I did try to do that. And, but, you know, it wasn't too long till I got that call. It said, we've traded you to the Chicago White Sox, and here's Bill Veck's phone number, you know. And so, but I thought, you know, I remembered the Santo experience, and it just, but you know, and I'll tell you a quick story if I can. The first night I played in Chicago in Comiskey Park, we were playing the Yankees, and the White Sox were playing really well in 1977, and they were kind of fighting for the pennant. And so my first night there, we're in Comiskey Park and everything, and Bob Lemon was the manager of the White Sox, and a super guy, super. If you couldn't play for Bob, you couldn't play for anybody. And so I didn't start that game. I was sitting watching the game, and I mean, a couple of funny things I said, which is kind of a baseball statement. It was a real close, tie game in about the 8th inning or sometime, and I said, let's get one and hold them. And that's just a kind of something you say, you know, let's go get a run here in the bottom of the 8th and hold them in the 9th, and we win. And Bob Lemon walked down to me and he said, Kess, you hadn't been here very long. We need to get 10 runs and hope we can hold them. No, well, it was a funny thing, you know. But that first night, Bob Lemon came down to me and he said, if Lamar Johnson gets on, I want you to go pinch run for him. And that's the only time in my life I probably was pulling for my teammate not to get a hit, Because I didn't know what was going to happen if I ran out on that field. It was a full house, 50,000, whatever. And he hit a double, wouldn't you know? He hit a double. And Bob said, go out there, go kids, go. It's okay. So I didn't know if I'd get to second base or somebody shoot me before I got there or just what the reaction would be. But it was one of the greatest moments in my baseball career. As I ran out there, literally, they gave me a standing ovation like, welcome back to Chicago. And I can't even tell you the feeling except standing at second with tears, coming down. And Bucky Dent, playing short for the Yankees, came over to me and he said, what did you do to these people? And I said, I don't know, Bucky, but don't tell them any different. And so, that's my story for my first game in White Sox Park. It was great. And, just had some blessings.
Don't go anywhere. Audibles returns in a moment here on the Spirit Media Network.
We're going the extra mile, and we're taking you with us.
We have a responsibility to get the work to the streets.
Join us on the Extra Mile podcast as we travel Mississippi highways to bring you in-depth conversations with state leaders.
Gotta have the ability to get their product to market.
Infrastructure stakeholders and Mississippi locals to give you a behind-the-scenes look at transportation throughout the state.
Highways, movement of goods, these are things that we rely on every day.
You can listen and watch episodes of the show by visiting gomdot.com/the extra mile.
Wendy's without the Wendy's app is like a hamburger without the fresh beef.
No!
Get the app to order ahead, order delivery, earn free food, and get app-exclusive offers. One app, all the Wendy's.
We believe patient-centered care is where it all begins. That's why King's Daughters Medical Center ranks nationally in patient care and safety. Our staff's commitment to better healthcare means a higher quality of life for so many. We are one team, one heartbeat, one mission to provide this community with the high-quality healthcare. KDMC, caring for our community like no one else can.
Family owned and operated since 1986, Lakeside Molding has become the trusted source of architectural products throughout the South. They offer fine interior architectural moldings, custom millwork, and cabinet doors designed and handcrafted in Flowwood. Their showroom on Lakeland Drive is stocked with today's most sought-after interior details, including corbels, post, fireplace mantles, bath vanities, mirrors, and much more. Tim Shoemaker and his staff work closely to meet client needs for new construction, restoration, and remodeling projects. Lakeside Molding, where details make the difference.
So sweet, so crispy. Nobody makes breakfast as good as Wendy's new home-style French toast sticks.
Nobody.
Nope.
Keep talking. I can't hear you.
I should probably stop.
Choose wisely. Choose Wendy's home-style French toast sticks.
For those on the go, we give you Audibles with Jason Scarborough, the podcast.
What are we listening to? Are we listening to a playlist? Are we listening to a podcast?
What a great question.
Listen to our intimate interviews with guests on your favorite podcast platforms, including iTunes, Google Play, Amazon Music, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, and so many more.
Do you ever look back and say, my life, the story could have ended up differently had it not been for your grandparents?
Incredibly different, for sure.
Plus, you'll hear behind-the-scenes commentary on each guest, interview preparation, location, and so much more from Jason himself.
Do you have a favorite Coach Bowden story that you can share with us?
I can tell you this, what you see with Bobby Bowden is what you get.
Check out Audibles with Jason Scarborough, the podcast, on any of these popular podcast locations and hit subscribe, download, and enjoy. Now, back to the show.
You talk about that emotional moment and how supported you still were in the town of Chicago, in the city of Chicago. The White Sox held a Don Kessinger night, September 8th, you're already nodding, 1978, and there were over 31,000, if not more, Chicago baseball fans, and I've read different reports and different accounts that you couldn't tell which one was more. Was it more White Sox fans? Was it more Cubs fans? It was kind of evenly split. So knowing how humble you are, knowing how you don't try to get the spotlight. You try to deflect. What was that experience like for you?
Unbelievable. I mean, I never expected to have a Don Kessinger day. You know, I just wasn't I'm not that good. I wasn't that kind of player. You know, and home run hitters get days. You know, and but they had a day for me, and they did it right, and it was nice. And my former Cub players showed up and brought a gift or something, you know, and it was, Jason, it was an unbelievable experience, you know.
Barely a month after that, October 19th, they named you player manager, which you were the last in American League history to be player manager. And you're not playing the volume of innings at this point in your career that you were early on, but it still had to be taking a toll on you being a player and manager.
You know, there's a good reason that there aren't any other player managers. I mean, you know, I don't think I did a great job, and I think it's a very difficult thing to do. And the guy has to have a certain personality to be able to do that. My coaches, Bobby Winkles and Joe Sparks and Fred Martin, they kept telling me, you got to place more. You got to play more. We need you to play more. And, you know, my deal was, and it's just telling you the straight up truth, I got to make out the lineups. I mean, I get to do that as a manager. And I would never have wanted my teammates to think I'm putting me in just because I can. And so I was very reluctant to play as much as I probably should have played that year. And but I didn't, and we didn't, and it's just the way it goes. But you know, that's taking nothing away from the young man that was playing shortstop. But it was, I probably should have played a little more.
August 2nd, 1979, that's a tough day. That's the day that you resigned, and I remember seeing some of the clips. A reporter asked you, "Well, are you going to continue playing?" And you said, "No." You were stepping away from baseball pretty much for good at that point. So how difficult was that day?
It was hard. It was hard. I tell you what happened. I just knew that I wasn't going to come back next year and do this. You know, I don't know that I thought I'd done a great job. I did best I could, but it just wasn't the right thing. And it was time for me to go spend time with my wife and my boys. My kids were growing up and playing from little stuff, and I wasn't getting to see them do much, and it just wasn't me. I needed to do that. So I went into Bill Veeck on an off day, and I'll throw a tidbit in there. We had played, well, that may not be true, so maybe I better stop there. But I was going to tell you that the day Thurman Munson died in his plane crash, we had just played them the night before in Comiskey Park. And I might have been going to put two things together, probably weren't true, so I don't know. But, you know, at any rate, I just told Bill Veeck on an off day, I said, Bill, look, thank you for everything you've done. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, but it's time for me to move on to something else. I'm not going to be back. I'm not going to come back next year. And he said, well, I want you to come. I said, well, thank you. Thank you very much, but it's not going to happen. And I said, now, we're going to do whatever you want to do. Tony La Russa is the manager in AAA, and I know he's probably who you're going to bring next year in. Do you want to go ahead and do that? We'll do it. You know, I'm open to whatever you say, because I'm the one that's telling you what I'm doing. And he said, well, if you're definitely 100% sure what you're saying, let's just go ahead and bring Tony in. I said, okay, let's do it. And that's what we did. I'd known Tony La Russa. We'd played together a little bit with the Cubs. And I knew he was going to be a heck of a manager, you know. I was right about that.
You were right about that.
And anyway, you know, he came in, and I just went out to the airport when our team was leaving to go on that road trip to tell everybody thanks for the efforts, and that's the way it is. So that's what we did.
A decorated career in the majors, not bad for the kid from Forrest City, Arkansas, right? So after Major League Baseball, what was next? What was next for you?
Well, first of all, you have to adjust to a different life. And, but I never really looked back and said, boy, I wish I hadn't done this or wish I was still playing. I was home where I wanted to be. I mean, I was home with my wife and my boys, and I was getting to watch them. So, it was all wonderful, all well and good, and we just had to move on to a new life.
You weren't out of baseball long. Prior to the 1991 season, you become the head baseball coach here at Ole Miss. So what was the straw that broke the camel's back, I guess is one way to put it, for you to come out of retirement and say, okay, I'm going to go lead the Rebels. I'm going to be the head coach for the Rebels?
It's a good question. And I asked myself that question numerous times. But, look, Jake Gibbs was a coach at Ole Miss. I love Jake Gibbs. I think he was a super guy. I still love Jake Gibbs. And I had two boys that played here for Jake Gibbs. And so certainly I wasn't ever trying to get Jake Gibbs' job. But when he retired and Ole Miss offered me an opportunity to at least come visit with them about it, it's just something that was there. I mean, that was it, and I felt like I could help. I felt like I could, and I don't know that I did, but I tried, and I loved it. But and we had some good teams, and so I've never regretted that. My regret has been that I couldn't have been the guy that took us to Omaha. That's my regret. My regret with the Cubs was always that we didn't play in the World Series for those fans, great fans. And now here I am at Ole Miss and at least have an opportunity to try to get this team to Omaha. And we got close, but we didn't do it.
That team in '95, they were close. They were very close. That team at the time produced a school record for wins, winning 40 games, earning the school's first NCAA regional appearance at that time since 1977. So you were oh so close. How rewarding, I know you said you couldn't get them to Omaha, but it still had to be rewarding for you to give so much back to a program and a school that it meant so much to you.
Well, it did. I mean, we were not satisfied with that year, but we were proud of how far we might have come. And but again, there's an ultimate goal. And Ole Miss fans certainly understand that. There's been a lot made of that. And so the times were a little bit different. Let me update you just a little bit. Back then, when I was coaching, it's not like there's 65 teams getting NCAA today. There are 48 teams that got bids. And there were eight teams go to Omaha, so there were 8 regions with 6 teams in each region. That's 48 teams. And probably somebody had to show that to me, multiply that out. But anyway, there were 48 teams. And so you'd go to a tough region. I mean, you're going someplace and we went to Tallahassee. We went to Florida State. And we got beat by Florida State in the final day. And so we didn't get to make that to Omaha. But, if things had been then like they are today, we would have been in several, I think, regionals, because now it's different how they do it, and but that wasn't the time, that wasn't the way it went. So we didn't, but I had a great time. I had some great kids, and I'll never be sorry for having tried that.
Don't go anywhere. Audibles returns in a moment here on the Spirit Media Network.
Quality of life is about lifelong care. Your family's health care is important to you, and that's important to us. King's Daughters Medical Center is here for your family in every stage of life, from the excited new parents, adolescent and teen years, to the big day. Walking alongside of you in life's journey, living a healthier life. KDMC, caring for our community like no one else can.
Wendy's without the Wendy's app is like a hamburger without the fresh beef.
No!
Get the app to order ahead, order delivery, earn free food, and get app-exclusive offers. One app, all the Wendy's.
We're going the extra mile, and we're taking you with us.
We have a responsibility to get the work to the streets.
Join us on the Extra Mile podcast as we travel Mississippi highways to bring you in-depth conversations with state leaders.
Gotta have the ability to get their product to market.
Infrastructure stakeholders and Mississippi locals to give you a behind-the-scenes look at transportation throughout the state.
Highways, movement of goods, these are things that we rely on every day.
You can listen and watch episodes of the show by visiting gomdot.com/the extra mile.
So sweet, so crispy. Nobody makes breakfast as good as Wendy's new home-style French toast sticks.
Nobody.
Nope.
Keep talking. I can't hear you.
I should probably stop.
Choose wisely. Choose Wendy's home-style French toast sticks.
For those on the go, we give you Audibles with Jason Scarborough, the podcast.
What are we listening to? Are we listening to a playlist? Are we listening to a podcast?
What a great question.
Listen to our intimate interviews with guests on your favorite podcast platforms, including iTunes, Google Play, Amazon Music, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, and so many more.
Do you ever look back and say, my life, the story could have ended up differently had it not been for your grandparents?
Incredibly different, for sure.
Plus, you'll hear behind-the-scenes commentary on each guest, interview preparation, location, and so much more from Jason himself.
Do you have a favorite Coach Bowden story that you can share with us?
I can tell you this, what you see with Bobby Bowden is what you get.
Check out Audibles with Jason Scarborough, the podcast, on any of these popular podcast locations and hit subscribe, download, and enjoy. Now, back to the show.
You talk about the experience at Ole Miss. You had the opportunity to coach one of your sons here at Ole Miss. Yeah. How cool was that? How do you describe that experience?
Well, it was an unbelievable experience. I mean, it really was a great experience, and I was really, really blessed that my son was a really good player. I mean, sometimes when you coach your son, it's a recipe for disaster. Because if he needs to either really be good or really be bad. Van Chancellor told me that one time. He said, if you're going to coach your own child, he needs to be really good where nobody would question you playing him, or really not good enough to play, and use them as you can. And I think that was words of wisdom. Not that you can necessarily control that, but Gray was an all-SEC player here, and he really was a good player, and he stole a lot of bases, and he hit 380, whatever it was. And he made the job easier for me because he worked hard in practice, and he hustled all. It would have been bad if he had slacked off a little bit sometimes, but he didn't.
You have to look back at you played here at Ole Miss, and then your two sons play here at Ole Miss, and then your grandson played. I mean, 4 Kessingers wearing the Ole Miss jersey here. I mean, you've got to have a lot of pride when you think about that.
Oh, no doubt about that. And And one other grandson that probably barely missed that because he pitches for Memphis. And so anyway, it's just been such a thrill. And talking about Gray, he was an All-American here. And, you know, we just got to watch him and followed him everywhere and still following him, still watching his streamed games just about every night. So
he played in an All Star game while he was here at Ole Miss, and I saw you in a previous interview. He played at Wrigley Field, and you told him, hey, I hope I say it right. If you're going to go play in the dirt I played in, I'm going to go watch you.
That's what I told him. If you're going to play in my dirt, I'm going to be there.
How cool was that to be able to watch him?
Man, it was, you know, just you don't think about anything like that. And yeah, he earned it. He had the right to do it, and he was in an All-American game, and thrill. What a thrill.
One of my favorite moments, this is one of the coolest moments for you and really any Ole Miss sports fan, baseball fan. April of 2021, your number 11 is retired. It's now emblazoned here on the outfield wall here at Swayze Field. You're only the second number retiree in program history, joining your friend,
my friend Jake
Gibbs, on that outfield wall out here. So for you and your family, the Kessinger family, we just talked about what Ole Miss means to the Kessinger family, what just the marriage of the Kessinger family and Ole Miss and what that means.
You can't imagine the feeling. You really can't imagine the feeling. And I mean, of course, standing out there on the mound, my wife was with me and both my boys were there, and you know, we were just all very humbled by that and so appreciative of Ole Miss doing that. And again, I will say they did it the right way. They did it first class. It was a first class night.
Hardly a year after that, we're looking at this beautiful trophy here. Yeah. What was that moment, knowing that people like you and Jake Gibbs and so many others had laid the groundwork, been so close, and finally you get to see your beloved Rebels bring home this beautiful trophy, the national champs?
So amazing. I went to Omaha just really the last two games. I mean, but just sitting up there looking at what was in front of me. I mean, literally, there's 20,000+ Ole Miss fans that just took over the whole ballpark. It was unbelievable. And the players, boy, they played hard. Man, they played hard. And there was never a truer statement, I think, than don't let the Rebs get hot. You know, because they were hot, man.
Don't go anywhere. Audibles returns in a moment here on the Spirit Media Network.
When you find a great community, you will find great health care. That is exactly what King's Daughters Medical Center provides. Keeping businesses moving with occupational wellness, heart-healthy screenings, diabetes education and management, community education, and remote patient monitoring that promotes better care in between regular office visits. KDMC, caring for our community like no one else can.
We're going the extra mile, and we're taking you with us.
We have a responsibility to get the work to the streets.
Join us on the Extra Mile podcast as we travel Mississippi highways to bring you in-depth conversations with state leaders.
Gotta have the ability to get their product to market.
Infrastructure stakeholders and Mississippi locals to give you a behind-the-scenes look at transportation throughout the state.
Highways, movement of goods, these are things that we rely on every day.
You can listen and watch episodes of the show by visiting gomdot.com/the extra mile.
For those on the go, we give you Audibles with Jason Scarborough, the podcast.
What are we listening to? Are we listening to a playlist? Are we listening to a podcast?
What a great question.
Listen to our intimate interviews with guests on your favorite podcast platforms, including iTunes, Google Play, Amazon Music, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, and so many more.
Do you ever look back and say, you know, my life, the story could have ended up differently had it not been for your grandparents?
Incredibly different, for sure.
Plus, you'll hear behind-the-scenes commentary on each guest, interview preparation, location, and so much more from Jason himself.
Do you have a favorite Coach Bowden story that you can share with us?
I can tell you this, what you see with Bobby Bowden is what you get.
Check out Audibles with Jason Scarborough, the podcast, on any of these popular podcast locations and hit subscribe, download, and enjoy. Now, back to the show.
Tim Elko is the one that said that, and I think what's interesting that he said in one of the post games was, this was after the Rebels won it, he said, this is for all the Rebels that came before us. I don't know if you heard him say that.
No, he did say that.
For you, how neat was it for you to hear him say that, to take that moment, and for him personally that meant a lot to him, and recognize guys like you and Jake Gibbs and so many others?
Oh, it was well, he's class. Tim Elko is class, and that was class. You know, they were thrilled with what they had done, but they wanted to acknowledge all those that came before. And I thought it was one of the greatest things he could have said. And he said it right. I mean, he did. And of course, yeah, you're right with me. I mean, I've been here as a player and as a coach, and then Carolyn and I have had two boys that came and played, and so yeah, we'd like to think we had a small part of that. But it's always nice for somebody to acknowledge that.
So we talk about Ole Miss winning the national championship. You got to see them win it. And earlier when we were talking, I don't want to call it a regret, but you wish that you had been able to get the Cubs to the World Series, wish you'd been able to get the Rebels to the College World Series, but now you've been able to see both of your teams win a championship. How cool is that?
Well, it's amazing, you know. It is amazing. And yeah, when the Cubs did it, and you know, my boys came over and sat on the floor, and we watched the 7th game of the World Series, you know. And but you know, and that's no greater thrill than watching Ole Miss be the and you know, and I'm saying this seriously. It's even more incredible that two teams from Mississippi won that thing 2 years in a row. I mean, you think you don't play pretty good baseball in this part of the country? You know, it's amazing.
We've kind of answered that question resoundingly, haven't we, the last couple of years, hadn't we? So I'm going to switch gears on you a little bit. So what is Mr. Donnie, what do you like at home? When you're just relaxing and chilling out, what do you do just to relax and kind of take it easy?
Well, since I've retired, I just get in my recliner and sit back and relax, and probably watch a lot of sports and stuff on TV. And now, but just having Carolyn there with me all day, it's just a wonderful life. And you know, I hope I don't mess it up.
I know that your faith plays such a very important part in your life. You've been so active with FCA, all sorts of different Christian groups, and you've been very outspoken about your faith. So I'll ask you, what does faith mean to Mr. Donnie?
Everything. I mean, everything. It's all about getting your priorities in the right order. And my priorities, the most important thing in my life, is my relationship with Jesus Christ. And it has been for many, many years, and it's not going to change. And so I appreciate you asking me that question, because it is that important to me. And so, you know.
It's obviously important to us too here at the Spirit Media Network. So anytime we can ask that question, we want to be sure to ask it. So a final question for you. What do you think young Don Kessinger back in Forrest City, Arkansas, when you look at everything that you've accomplished, major league career, college baseball, Mr. Everything in college baseball, what do you think that young kid back in Forrest City, Arkansas would think about all that you've accomplished?
I don't think that young man back in Forrest City would have ever imagined that my life was going to be this blessed. And but it is. It is. And I certainly, without being overbearing in anything, I don't ever want to fail to acknowledge what's really most important to me. And Oh, I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to answer that question.
Well, this has been an interview I've wanted to do for a long time. I know that we've talked about it. Thank you for what you mean to Ole Miss, the state of Mississippi. And, hey, we're going to suggest you pick up this trophy before we leave here today one more time. And thank you for sitting down with us for Audibles. I really, really appreciate it.
Jason, thank you. Y'all do a great job, and it's my pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you so much. Man, I feel like we should clap after that one. What a great interview, man. That was awesome. That was awesome. Got to sit down with Mr. Ole Miss Rebel. Oh, man, that was so much fun.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you
that was so much fun. Thank you for that.
Appreciate you, man.
That was so much fun.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week for another episode of Audibles with Jason Scarborough.